Somewhere inside the US Treasury, a piece of software the government trusted completely had been quietly rewritten by someone else. December 2020. A cybersecurity firm in California discovers something impossible. Someone has broken into its own systems and walked out with the very tools it uses to simulate attacks on other companies, the digital equivalent of stealing a locksmith's master keys. The firm, FireEye, does what any serious security company would do. It turns the investigation inward, checking every login, every connection, every scrap of code that touched its network in the weeks before. And in doing that, its investigators find something that has nothing to do with their own breach, and everything to do with the future of American national security. Buried inside a piece of ordinary network management software, running on thousands of computers around the world, is a piece of code that should not exist. It has been there, undetected, for months. It has a name investigators will soon give it, Sunburst. And by the time anyone realizes it's there, it is already inside the US Treasury, the Department of Homeland Security, the National Institutes of Health, and dozens of Fortune 500 companies who never saw it coming. To understand how this happened, you have to understand a company almost nobody outside of IT departments had heard of, SolarWinds. Based in Austin, Texas, SolarWinds built software that most of the public would find deeply boring: network monitoring tools. Programs that let system administrators keep an eye on servers, routers, and databases from a single dashboard. One of its flagship products was called Orion. It wasn't glamorous. It was infrastructure. And that's exactly what made it so valuable to attack. By 2020, SolarWinds' Orion platform was installed inside more than 300,000 organizations worldwide, according to the company's own marketing at the time. Its customer list read like a roll call of American power. Multiple branches of the US military, the Department of State, the Department of Energy, and the National Nuclear Security Administration, the agency responsible for maintaining America's nuclear stockpile. Also on that list, Microsoft, Cisco, Intel, and hundreds of other private companies who trusted Orion to watch over their networks. Here is the uncomfortable truth at the center of this story. Network monitoring software needs deep, privileged access to everything it watches. To do its job, Orion had to be trusted almost completely, trusted enough to talk to firewalls, servers, and databases without triggering alarms. Which means that whoever controlled Orion didn't just have a foothold into one company's network. They had a foothold into thousands of them, simultaneously, all at once, hidden in plain sight. Somewhere, someone understood that better than SolarWinds itself did. The story doesn't begin in December 2020. It begins more than a year earlier, in September 2019, long before anyone at SolarWinds, or the US government, had any idea anything was wrong. Investigators would later determine that attackers first gained access to SolarWinds' internal network around this time. They didn't rush. They didn't smash and grab. Instead, they did something far more unsettling. They tested. In September 2019, the intruders injected trial code into SolarWinds' software build systems, a kind of dry run to see whether they could quietly insert their own instructions into legitimate updates without anyone noticing. That test ended in early November. It worked. Investigators also later discovered a chilling detail. The attackers may have first slipped into SolarWinds' email system through a compromised Office 365 account, using that access to move sideways into more sensitive parts of the network. Slowly, methodically. Like someone who has already decided they have all the time in the world. Then, on February 20, 2020, the attackers deployed what security researchers would later name Sunburst, malicious code hidden inside the Orion software's own build process. Not attached to it. Not bundled alongside it. Woven directly into it, so that when SolarWinds' own engineers compiled a new, official, digitally signed version of Orion, the malware went out the front door along with it, carrying the company's own cryptographic seal of trust. Between March and June of 2020, SolarWinds unknowingly shipped that corrupted update to its customers. More than 18,000 organizations downloaded it, according to the company's own later disclosures. Somewhere in that number were federal agencies responsible for nuclear weapons, foreign policy, and national defense. And for months, nothing happened. Or at least, nothing anyone could see. This is the part of the story that separates Sunburst from an ordinary computer virus. Most malware wants to be noticed eventually. It wants to encrypt your files and demand payment, or flood your screen with ads. Sunburst wanted the opposite. It wanted to disappear. After installation, the malware didn't activate immediately. It waited, silently, for roughly 2 weeks before making its first quiet contact with a command server, giving investigators later reason to believe the attackers understood exactly how forensic tools worked and exactly how long to wait before those tools would stop looking. When it did wake up, it checked its surroundings first. Was antivirus software running? Were forensic analysis tools active? Was it inside a security researcher's test environment rather than a real target? If anything looked wrong, it simply went dormant again, giving nothing away. Only once it was satisfied that it was truly inside a live, valuable network did Sunburst begin communicating outward, disguising its traffic to look like ordinary, harmless activity generated by the Orion software itself, blending into the very noise it was hiding inside. From there, the attackers weren't interested in every one of those 18,000 infected organizations. Mass infection was just the delivery mechanism. What came next was selection. Investigators believe the attackers manually reviewed the list of compromised networks and chose a much smaller number of high-value targets to actually explore further, deploying additional, more sophisticated tools only on the machines that mattered most. Ask yourself what that means. Somewhere, someone with access to this operation was sitting at a screen, looking at a list of 18,000 compromised organizations, and deciding, this one is worth the risk, this one isn't. That is not random opportunism. That is intelligence work. By December 2020, the operation had been running, undiscovered, for the better part of a year. And it might have continued far longer if not for a mistake that had nothing to do with SolarWinds at all. On December 8, 2020, FireEye, one of the most respected cybersecurity firms in the world, a company whose entire business is detecting nation-state hackers, announced that it had itself been breached. The attackers had made off with FireEye's own red team tools, software the company used, with permission, to simulate real-world attacks against its clients in order to test their defenses. In the wrong hands, those tools could be repurposed as genuine weapons. FireEye, understandably alarmed, launched an aggressive internal investigation to figure out exactly how the intruders had gotten in. And that investigation is what cracked the case open. Tracing the breach backward, FireEye's own security researchers found the entry point, a backdoor hidden inside their installation of SolarWinds Orion. On December 11 and 12, 2020, they connected the dots and realized they weren't just looking at an attack on their own company. They were looking at a supply chain compromise that had been quietly spreading across the world for the better part of a year. Here is the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. FireEye is a company whose entire purpose is catching hackers other people miss. And this operation still ran undetected inside their own network, and thousands of others, for months, uncovered not because anyone was hunting for it, but because the attackers happened to make one mistake, breaching the one company equipped to notice. What would have happened if they hadn't gone after FireEye at all? Once FireEye went public, the scale of what had happened began to come into focus, and it was staggering. The list of confirmed and suspected victims included the U.S. Department of the Treasury, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State, the Department of Energy, and the National Institutes of Health. Reports at the time also raised serious concern about whether the National Nuclear Security Administration, custodian of America's nuclear arsenal, had been touched. The Treasury breach was particularly alarming to investigators, with reporting at the time indicating attackers had gained access to internal email systems at the department. Emails. Ordinary, unremarkable, everyday communications, read, potentially, by a foreign intelligence service for months without anyone knowing. On the private side, Microsoft confirmed that its own systems had been affected and later stated publicly that its source code repositories had been accessed, though the company said it found no evidence the code itself had been altered. Cybersecurity firms, telecommunications companies, and Fortune 500 corporations across multiple industries were caught in the same net. Think about what that means for a moment. This wasn't an attack on one target. It was an attack on the idea of trust itself, the assumption, baked into how modern organizations operate, that a signed, verified software update from a known vendor is safe to install. SolarWinds' own customers did exactly what every security expert tells you to do. They kept their software updated. That instinct, the one drilled into every employee, every IT department, every one of us, is precisely what let the attackers in.